This is the third day of spring. Tomorrow, summer starts. And this is followed by 115 days of January. So it's been, as gardeners, it's been a hard row for us to hoe, so to speak, or rake or whatever, because everything is so late. It's probably 2 or 3 weeks late. So we are behind, and everybody else is too. I'm not going to talk about the house at all, but I am going to talk about, I'm going to introduce the people who owned this house and why they came here. The house was owned by Edward Moore, who was, he was big in interurban railroad and in banking. He started out in banking. That's where he got some money to go into the railroad. And he also did something with electricity and telephones. So let's just call him a rich guy. So he lived in Cleveland, and Cleveland at the time, I want to take you back a little bit as to why he moved here. None of you would remember Cleveland as it was at the turn of the century. And of course, I'm talking about 1900, not 2000. And in those days, you would have been pretty well cramped into Cleveland, and there'd be a lot of industry, a lot of smoke from steel mills, from whatever commerce there was. The roads at the time were sometimes plank roads, sometimes just dirt, sometimes less. Everybody would have an animal. They would have a barn in the yard. They'd have chickens. They'd have horses in order to run their carts or whatever they had. And it was noisy. It was dirty. Yuck. They wanted air. They wanted to get out. So they would come out to the country. And of course, Mr. Moore wanted to give his children a nice place. At the time, he had 4 children. So he was looking for a place on Lake Erie. And he did buy a piece of land close to the lake, and then decided, with 4 children, I don't think I want them near the lake. So he came over here and decided to live on the hill where there's a lot of air, and there's a river as the water, so it's pretty safe. So he came out here and built this little shack. I can't even tell you how many square feet it is. I think we figured it out at one time. But he kept buying pieces of land until finally he amassed a great deal of land. And this is the picture I'm going to show you here, is the map of his land. This consists of about 1,950 acres. And you'll be able to see that up here, this is Euclid Avenue, or Menor Avenue, excuse me. And right here would have been the entry, which is about where Barnes & Noble is now. And this is Route 84. And then this is I-90, which came later. That was 1963, I believe. And then way down here, we're in the lowlands of Kirtland, where there's just CEI towers now. So you've already crossed the river, which is here. And this land is really nothing at all. I don't know why he had it. It just came with the property that he bought. And right here in the middle is Moorland, where we are now. Something about this land was that he had 4 working farms, and the farms were independent in a way so that they could gain their own income, but they also gave a part to Mr. Moore, and he would use his railroad the electric car to bring these goods to Cleveland. And the goods would be beef, it'd be milk, eggs, chicken stuff, whatever produce they had on the farm. So, and they also had a farm market on Mentor Avenue. So that was basically the income and another reason for being here. Meanwhile, he would go off to work in Cleveland, but the family would be here for the summer. They would entertain guests in this house not until about 1907, because the house was smaller. The original house was smaller. Maybe we can see it here. You see the shape of the house here seems to have something on the back here. That used to be the kitchen that was out that way. So in 1907, the house was redone, and there was a second story there, and then this was done over again too, so that they could entertain. But before that, it was just a family house. A little big, but it was a family house. The house was built in 1900, the original house, and it was built at a cost of about $12,000. Can you believe that? Believe this one. Then he landscaped it at about the same time for $22,000. That doesn't make sense to me, but maybe it will later on when we start talking about what was on the land. The driveway to the house was about almost a mile long to get to Mentor Avenue, which is back this way, if you look at it again. Some things that you might recognize on this this property, if you know anything about the property at all, anybody who works here realizes that Camelot was over here, and there used to be on 306. Do you remember the old yellow house? It was 2.5 stories tall. It used to be a farm, and it had the usual farm things: the barn, the silo, and the animals and whatnot. But that's gone. Camelot is gone. The other farms are all gone. But there was a north farm at this end up here, and there was a river farm down here. Then this was the south farm, and that one is the hill farm. The hill farm, I believe the house still exists, and that's right across the, where are we? Right across the freeway. Nothing else is there, just the house. One of the children did live there, one of the girls. There were eventually 5 children. One was born actually in the hill farm as this house was being built. So there were 5 children. But that young son did die, so there were 4 left. There are some relatives left, but they're in Arizona. We see them once in a while, and they have seen this house redone. This is what the grounds used to look like, kinda. It's kind of a in-between drawing. You'll see that the house is now a different shape. You see that the house used to have a pool, which was right here, or right there. So people would actually be in this house. This would be the porch with screens and all, and they would sit out on the porch and they could dive into the pool. I don't have pictures on the screen of what that looked like, but I do have some photographs on the table that you can look at, and you'll see where there used to be a pool. It was filled in, and unfortunately is filled in with the dirt from the rose garden.
And the
And the roses, yeah. Everything's there. And it was quite the pool. I've been here long enough that I actually saw the diving board and the equipment, and I could just picture everybody, or the men, climbing up on the pergola that was there and then diving into the pool from there, thinking they were mere boys. Then right behind that is the rose garden, which is out this way. And in the back of that is called a pergola, which is actually a large arbor. It's covered with wisteria. It should be called mysteria because we hardly ever see it bloom. I do have a picture of it, so that'd be a good thing. Then over here was actually the tennis court. This is a later drawing, so bear with me. This was a tennis court connected to the formal garden here, which is over that way. And then there was an apple orchard. On this land, well, maybe I'm going too far. Do you have anything to say, Sharon?
The little square in the middle of where Lori pointed out the tennis court is what they had as a tennis changing house.
Oh, here.
Yeah, we refer to that as our garden house today because we keep all of our tools there.
So that's the same structure?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's not in terribly good shape, but we use it. The apple orchard has come and gone. It seems like everything at Moreland just comes and goes. It gets changed a lot, and we took the name of Moreland Restoration Garden Club because we had to clear the land of all this trash that was growing on it, and we thought we could restore the gardens. Well, yes and no. The land that we're on now is not the land that was there 115 years ago or whatever, because everything changes. Of course, the trees have made the major difference. You can no longer grow things in pure sunlight because we don't have that much anymore. We have what we call a green garden, which is the best shady place to go. But back in those days, it was the pergola that you would go to and sit here, and you could watch tennis players over here, you could watch golfers over here, you could sip your lemonade with bathtub gin in it from the pergola, and it was windy, nice and breezy there. It's a good place to be. I will talk about the what was originally here, and you're going to have to kind of picture things. There was on the land, I said the 4 farms. There was each farm had a barn bigger than the next guy's barn because it was a contest. Anybody with money was always in a contest. It was build the bigger barn. The animals had, competition with animals at the fair had started, and so they all had bulls for their cows, of course. So the competition was who had more bull than the other. So that carried over with the farms too, and the structures. There was on this moorland piece of the whole property, there was the golf course, there was a polo field, there was the swimming pool, there were 3 servants' homes, there was a children's playhouse. The playhouse was complete with gas and electric, and you could stand up in it. It wasn't your child's playhouse. And then there was a piggery. I never knew what a piggery was, but now I know. It stinks, I know. A hennery, and I didn't know this before, but every time I look at these pictures, I come up with something new, and I discovered that what I thought was a 9-car garage was actually the original Henry, which was next to a greenhouse. The greenhouse was pretty good size, and it was deep. It had a cistern underneath. They would actually pump water from the East Branch of the Chagrin River into the cistern and then pump it all around the grounds for the pool and watering anything that they had for the house, because there was indoor plumbing. And some of you might have even seen this pump house. It's located on Chillicothe Road at the Bend in Kirtland. It's usually covered with grapevines. You can only see it in the winter, and it has bars on the window. And I actually thought it was the original Kirtland Jail. But no, it was the pump house for this estate. Then, along with the greenhouse, we had of course, we had the rose garden and the formal garden. There was a cutting garden. There was a vegetable garden. And as I said, the pergola was lined with wisteria.
Where was the greenhouse located?
The greenhouse, you all parked down there in the parking lot. As you, if you looked over the grass into the orchard, there's this little mound. The greenhouse was at that mound, so it was right just off of what's now a pavement for the. That's why there's a little notch in the parking lot where the greenery comes in a little bit. Well, that's where the greenhouse was. So that was all filled in. This was the house as we first saw it in 1988 when we first came here. It was, somebody had lived in it until 1982. And what I wanted to point out is that person lived in one room upstairs, that was right here, and here. And that was Margaret Moore Clark. She was one of the daughters, and she lived here until 1982. And did not die in this house, but nearby. What I wanted to show you here was all these daffodils. You see this path coming here? When we came here, the place was so trashed that it was hard to tell what was going on until you cleared the land. But the daffodils told the story. They told us exactly where things used to be. That was the path that went to the children's playhouse. And it also continued on to the Henry, the piggery, blah, blah, blah. There were daffodils everywhere. There's not too many left that show a path, but there was a path back this way and over there. They're all gone now because we have Yard Master and others. I don't want to blame it just on Yard Master. Anybody who ever came to cut the grass also cut down the daffodils. And if you cut them down often enough, they will not come back. So good thing we got our story down when we did, because you can't do that now. And then when we cleared the land, we could see that there were gardens and how the beds used to be. That's the house as it is improved. I hope it still looks that way. I think it does. All the trees and scrub were removed, and I had a new roof and all that stuff. And that's where we are right now. This is what it used to look like. These were rhododendrons here that were 2 stories tall. Some tall, I think they were yews. I didn't actually see those myself, but that's what it had come to, and worse. This is an aerial view of what the house looks like now. Those are not Matchbox cars, that's just the way it looks. You'll see, here's the rose garden right here. You are here. And the formal garden is over in this way, the green garden. This also shows one of the improvements that we made with the garden club. We do raise money, and we decided that we needed a path to go back to the gardens so that people would know where to go, that we had something else on this land. Sharon, let me get to the roses and then you can talk about the path and the money raising and all that. This is, again, is the back of the house. And that's what it looks like now. It's been restored with the porch and the awning and everything. It's just very nice. But everything was in great decay. Okay, here's our memorial rock, which is, where are you, Rock? It's over here. We hopefully you can get out in the garden and take a tour and on this fine day and see all these nice things. Am I in your way? Thank you. Here's the rose garden in 1964 when it was still being worked on. You'll see that there were a lot of roses. There were supposed to be 2,000 rose bushes on this land. We can't prove a thing, but I think that's one reason why it costs so much to landscape. Not that roses were that expensive at the time, it's just that there were a lot of trees and whatever else you need here and all the structures that went on the land. Most gardens were designated by green urns of some kind. They're not green, that's blue. It's gray. No, it's really green. And you'll see that there's a water faucet and there's a fountain in the middle. The fountain came later, and back here, this is the pergola that you can hardly see, but you can see through it. So then, that's what it came to. That's what we found when we came here. And we had to do something with it. This is the fountain. Everything else is overgrown. You can't even see the pergola at all. It was just a horrible, horrible mess. The wisteria that was on the pergola was all over the place. It was within 30 feet of this house. Just all over the place. Then we improved it. Our first attempt at doing anything with it was planting the roses, and because there were so many deer, we had to put up a fence. So our first fence was electric. I forgot to tell you that there was actually a deer petting zoo on the land. Somebody left the door open, and that's why we have deer today, because there weren't any in Ohio before that. That's a joke. How do I know? They had to come from somewhere, and they were here. Seriously. I have a picture of the deer, but nothing on the land that would prove that this was the land. It is an old photo. And this is our later attempt at garden. We were able to get a 7-foot fence, which Lakeland constructed for us, and we did a nice sidewalk and got everything cleaned up.
About what year?
Sharon?
Oh, I don't remember. I do know the electric fence, and what was showing there would have been in the early 90s. But I don't recall when we got this fence.
I don't either, but we'd already started with the weddings there, so it had to be
So
after.
after the house was, after they received a grant.
Somewhere after 2000, let's say 2004 or 5, something like that.
That's still there now.
The garden is not that pretty right now.
No, it's not.
Sharon, please talk
I'll
about
take-
roses.
Okay.
And if you want to go forward, that's that one.
Oh, thanks. I'll step back just a little bit. A bit of history is that this really, Moreland almost went by way of the wrecking ball. You know, we've heard Dr. Doty speak when he came on board. Someone brought him over and he had to wear a raincoat and boots and asked, when is the wrecking ball coming? Because it was in such a sad state of affairs. And there were a few community members who decided they wanted to save the mansion. There were studies done, feasibility studies on uses for the mansion. And it was suggested that a business and conference center would be best for it. And that's what came to pass. But Lakeland did work and eventually obtain a grant. The community was in here working, all volunteers, nipping away at some painting and restoration work, and some people gravitated towards the gardens, as Lori mentioned, and chopped away at wisteria for many years. Lori was one of them.
Excuse me, that picture can only be 2 years old. You know why? See the shrubs in front by the gate?
Yes,
Those are fairly new.
right. So we've got then and now, past and present, as this is named. But anyhow, the community worked and worked and worked, and the college kept working towards getting a grant to help redo the mansion, and they eventually got that. And it has become what it is today. Many of the volunteers who worked in the house advised people through the restoration. Quite lovely, as you can see. And we have a small group that kind of morphed into what became the Moreland Restoration Garden Club. This was in the late 80s. And Lori was here at the beginning. We probably have about 5 members who have been here since the late 80s. I didn't join myself until '92, and I can tell when some of the pictures are by the progress in the gardens themselves. But I do have to say that one thing we were very fortunate to have were blueprints of the gardens. Lori talked about how much it cost to have the gardens put in. Architects were involved. We had the original blueprints, and they are laid out exactly as they were in the day. So they even had extensive records of what was grown in at least the formal garden and the green garden. The rose garden, there was nothing as far as a record of the types of roses that they put in. There were just a few original roses left. Lori told you that they plowed the rose garden into the swimming pool. I think it was a liability issue, and they wanted to fill in that big hole, so they did with the roses. But we do have some roses original to Moreland, and we'll talk about things as we go through the slides. But this is pretty much what you see today. In the rose garden, the volunteers originally obtained a grant from a rose developer's family. So they put the roses that he developed in. But we've learned through the years that they weren't the best for garden display. They were beautiful show roses, still are top roses, but they're a bit prone to disease. And as the rose industry has grown and learned, other things have been developed, and we're trying to transition into roses with much more profuse bloom. And we've been really fortunate in that regard. I think I'll take a break just to talk about the club a little bit more. It is all volunteer. Lakeland does provide much help with regards to contractors and taking care of the grass. Originally, the volunteers even did that back in the day, but we got tired, so now that's all taken care of, and we really focus on the 3 gardens, the rose garden, the green garden, which Lori talked about, the tennis courts. When Mr. Moore passed away, Mrs. Moore did what she wanted to do, and it became another garden. Very shady, beautiful to sit in a hot summer day, and our formal garden. So our focus is there. We are a very small group of people. We welcome volunteers. No experience is necessary, just a willingness to learn and work. And we're usually here on Thursday and Saturday mornings. Lori talked about fundraising. There is a fundraiser each fall, usually the last Saturday in October or first Saturday in November, depending on availability. And it's a huge craft fair. It used to be held here at the mansion, but it outgrew the mansion, so it's now in the gymnasium at Lakeland. And all of the proceeds from that craft fair go into the funds for the garden. We have one other means of raising some funds, and that's we call our Rose Memorials and Honorariums. So if you know someone who's passed away and you wish to memorialize them, or you wish to honor someone because they've done something special, they've attained a special goal in their lives, or they've done something special for you and you want to thank them, you can contribute to the Rose Gardens, and a lovely letter is sent to the recipient or their family if someone's passed, to let them know that this has been done. The form is online, and I'll talk about that at the end. Oh, and we have 2 books that keep record of all of these entries. There is one in the room next to us that you can view later if you wish, year by year. And we keep one out on a white pedestal near the rose garden when the weather is good. But I am not going to go and talk about every picture that's coming up. These are some really great things we've captured through the years, just of different things grown at Moreland. But I'm going to tell you, you can stop me at any time and ask Lori or I what you like, or if you have questions on it. This is one of the older roses that was put in when the garden was first restored. As I mentioned, we have records of things that happened with the roses. The only thing we knew about the roses is that the outer circles, the outer beds, were pink, the inner circles were white, and the corners were a variety of colors. So we do try and keep with that theme. We do try and keep the historical integrity where we can, but again, as Lori mentioned, with the growth of the trees on the property, we're somewhat shaded in areas, so we've had to change things a bit. But this is a first prize. It's one of the ones that's more susceptible to disease, and we're gradually replacing it. And it's not a profuse bloomer either, but it's a wonderful show rose. Duet is another. We have a lot of issues with black spot on this particular rose. This is the one we're trying to incorporate into the pink beds. It's called Belinda's Dream. It's a profuse bloomer. It's a shrub rose. It's got that tea rose form. And it's called an earth kind rose because you really don't have to spray it for disease. It's very disease resistant. We heartily recommend this one. Pink Parfait. Harlow Carr is one we're just kind of testing over the last couple of years. It's got more of the old rose form, and it's very fragrant.
Very thorny.
Yes, it is. This is the white one we have the most of. It's done well for us. we've worked closely with members of the local rose societies to get recommendations and their expertise. This is one that one of our Rose Society gurus was taking cuttings of from his own gardens and propagating for us. So we're just starting to get into this one. This one has held up, but it's not particularly winter hardy. And this is another newer one we're just testing out a bit. Again, very fragrant, has the old rose form. That one's very fragrant. Some black spot though. We have one love. Before the house, the mansion was redone, the Rose Society did hold a couple of rose shows here. And one of our members took that and took a cutting and put it out in the rose garden, and it took.
Question.
Yes.
Is there any reason, you mentioned trees and shade actually being a problem. Is there a reason why you can't cut back the trees?
Equipment.
We haven't thought of doing that. Many of the things, they did have the means to get some very unusual things here at Moreland that you don't find much in the other areas. We did have a botanist from Holden come over to do some identification quite a number of years ago. So I don't know that we'd want to take too many out. Some go by the way naturally. We do like the shade in the green garden. Certainly the ones that are around the rose garden are too big to take down at this point. And the rose garden isn't impacted much. I think probably the formal garden is the one most affected by the shady trees. And we've adapted and learned what we can put where. We at one time, as I said, work with our local rose societies to get their expertise, and they were always saying, come to the rose shows, come to the rose shows. You should go if you can. They're usually at Holden Arboretum once a year, and that one will be, I believe, in September. The one in June will be held downtown at the Botanical Gardens. But I could never go to the rose show because we were too busy working at Moreland. It's always on a Saturday morning. We can't do that, we're too busy. But we carved out a little time, and Lori put this lovely bouquet together, and it took first prize. So we were really proud of that since we weren't experienced showers.
We never did it again.
No, we haven't had time. This is the pergola. It does bloom. It's just that the last couple of years, we've had heavy freezes and repetitive freezes in the spring, and it just kills off the buds. Typically, it will bloom around Mother's Day. Of course, Mother Nature plays into it. But that was a good year.
A very good year.
Yes. Laurie talked about the shade and the cool, and this is, I primarily work in the rose garden. Laurie focuses a lot on the formal garden, but we do wander around a bit. But this is where I would hide out and get out of the sun for a little while. They referred to it as the outdoor ballroom, so we believe they must have held some dances there. And it is cement, I guess, over rebar. So we had a contractor here for one of the Lakeland Foundation events, and he looked at that. He said, that will be up long after we're gone. many photo ops around the property, as you can see.
Yeah. This goes into the rest of the garden.
With some of the funds that we've raised, we don't use them solely for the gardens. We always talk about Moreland Gardens being one of the best kept secrets in Lake County, and it's surprising to us how few people know about the gardens here. You know, we do try and get the word out, and today's an example of that. So, but we know by being up here in the mansion, people might see the rose garden, but they weren't even aware that we had the formal garden and green garden back there. So at first we put up a couple of white arbors to help point the way, and you know, we had a few weddings in those gardens, although it's a small confined area. But just to entice people to take a walk back into the gardens, thought a pathway would work out well, and it has. That's on one of the arbors.
That's the entrance to the formal and the green gardens. That's,
We have, it's more, a little more west. We have also a duplicate of that on the east side going just into the green garden. I have to mention that this was done by our volunteers. Lori and her husband built it. My husband designed it. And they followed the instructions. We are seeing some deterioration, unfortunately, so we'll be looking at replacing that with probably some type of a composite. This is entering into the green and formal gardens. Rhododendron.
azalea.
Oh, sorry, azalea. This is, as we said, it was the original tennis changing house. This shows the tennis players before it was replaced by the green garden. We actually have some of the tennis poles still standing up back there. But the trees are very, very small compared to what you can see today when you look back. This is the old tennis changing house, now our garden house. These roses are original to Moreland. We believe them to be seven sisters, and they're growing on trellises that one of our garden club members built to replace those that had fallen down and decayed. There's one on the front, one on the back. This is our green garden coming in from the east side. They did use blue through the gardens. We found pieces of tiles here and there. And Lori mentioned the urns. I think that the color on that particular picture in the rose garden, they were blue, but they just didn't show well in that picture. There's the rhododendron. This is what it was. So there's some before and after. I would invite you, if you didn't have the time to see the easels here earlier, to please take the time and take a look at them. And Lori did bring some things that are in the other room as well. But this shows the lily pond back in '85 before they started the restoration in the garden. Lori talked about water coming up, and it was pumped up from that cistern and filled this. It also filled the swimming pool. And this is the green garden as it appears today. Well, not today. Lori said we got a late start. I was here. We usually start working the last week of March, first week of April, weather permitting. Well, guess what? It wasn't. I happened to be here the first Saturday in April and took pictures of the snow and sent them to all the gardeners and said, maybe next week. We don't know.
Forgot to buy the permit.
Right.
This is a fringe tree.
Yeah. Not something you see very often. Is this original, Lori? I don't know.
The metalwork is not, the stand is. We don't know what was on it.
There were some great finds through the years. This is one of them. As they were working in the green garden, they kept hitting stone and unearthed this little rocky ledge. So we raised it when we had some extra help. In addition to our garden club, we do get a couple of community groups who come here and help us out. And it's a godsend. You know, we couldn't do it without their help. Key Bank comes in May each year for a half-day work session, and United Way Day of Caring, and it's late June this year. And a variety of companies in Lake County participate in that event and go out and work in the community. So we get some help.
This was the original border of the green garden. It was not fenced in, it was just open.
Yeah, none of the fencing that you see in the gardens today was here when we started. It's just because of that deer problem that we have it.
Were deer not that much of a problem 100 years ago?
They really weren't even in Ohio. Somebody told me that. She should know.
Well, it has to be because you can't have roses in an area like this. When I started with the rose garden in '92, my husband and I picked that as our pet project and worked and worked and worked. And I bet the first year we had a dozen roses because we had no fence. Beautiful plants, no roses. This is a dogwood, Kousa.
I don't think it's a Kousa.
No?
This is our, this is a remodel. This is a rock garden in the green garden.
But definitely complements that rocky ledge that was raised.
Today, it just looks like a pile of rocks.
You are welcome to walk around, but there's not much to see yet. So if you'd like to come back, remember we're here on Thursdays and Saturdays, about 9:30 to noon.
And you don't have to bring tools.
No, we have them.
Flame azalea.
Dogwood. Weigelia.
Yeah. This is an original urn that we found in the garden. Hydrangea. This is the autumn crocus, comes up without leaves.
And next,
This is the resurrection lily, which also comes up without leaves. And those were original. We did not do that.
This is a rhododendron that came from the back of the mansion, and we saved it and moved it back when they were starting to do remodeling. The formal garden. That's what it was when they started with the restoration.
Actually, it was worse than that because there was no path. You couldn't see the house.
Oh, that was after Lori went through with the scythe.
I didn't do it. That in the middle, I'll explain this a little bit. In the middle there is the, actually the bird bath. And for some reason it was covered up by an arbor so that you couldn't see anything. The beds in this garden, they're formal, but they also had these large yews on each corner of the garden. To me, it made it very small looking, and we couldn't tell what the flowers were. Over here you can see some of the arbors. They were painted blue. There's one here and one here. There were also urns, and there were also benches that were cement, and they were covered with blue tiles. And that's what it is today, tomorrow.
So it is opened up and it is used occasionally. Peonies.
Peonies were original to the land. We just had to uncover them and they grew. Same thing with lilies. This is a crabapple. There were two, but one of them died, and this one we'd probably not like to have. It's the old style that loses its leaves along about July.
Phlox.
This is wild phlox. Flag iris. Ditch lilies, that's what I call them. You'll find them in any ditch along the road. And there's our bird bath again.
And we do change up the flowers that are planted there. This garden is a wonderful scene for wedding photo ops, so there's something a little different, yellow around the bird bath.
And it's all cleaned up.
And sometimes, and you can even see in the triangular beds there year to year, we've tried some different things.
So you just plant annuals there?
Yes.
Yes, for the color. We have a number of perennials in the other beds, but those center beds are annuals.
In the foreground is lamb's ear, the gray stuff.
On the
And
corner.
the lilies behind are the tetraploid lilies.
Is there a problem with the deer on the daylilies?
As long as you keep the gates shut.
These gardens are fenced.
Yeah.
Okay, I talked earlier about having some of the original roses from Moreland still here. These are things that were found over in the formal garden area, and some were moved. We have one original picture that we saw, and they were planted along this pathway and also on the left side as well. But no one knows what they were. You know, we've had the people from multiple rose societies look at them, and they don't know. But as they said, really, Lake County was the rose capital of the United States in its heyday. And they said that one of the developers might have just had something that they put in.
While we're in this garden, I just wanted to point out that here's another arbor here, and there's a couple of them in the formal garden. This used to be a pathway where the guests in the house could walk through to the ravine way in the back. And over here, which was not fenced in, there was this whole line of daffodils, and they are also gone, but not entirely because nobody mows over there. I'm in your way. And the only blue thing we have in the garden now was the faucet that you saw. Okay.
Hostas.
Hibiscus. This is heuchera.
We learned through the years too, and change things.
This is actually a ground cover called ajuga, but it's a real intense close-up. I think Sharon was laying on the ground when she did this.
I don't do that anymore.
This is a stilby. Uh-oh. Some kind of wart.
Spiderwort.
Spiderwort, thank you. This is the cultured phlox. All I can think of is
Hollyhocks.
rose mallow, or hollyhock. We don't have those anymore.
Oh, maybe I should take that slide out.
We
This is
change all the time.
something fairly new, added a few years back. Just a focal point in a bed of what was pure lily of the valley, so fragrant. And it's so beautiful, the artists come. We get students from Lakeland who come over. Their teacher brings them over, but this lady stopped by one day. That's Lori. This is a deep, dark secret.
This
When
is a bigger secret than even us being gardeners working here. Nobody knows about us.
A Stilby turns brown.
See over on
It
the
gets
left,
ugly.
over on the left, there's the brown Astilbe. It's already finished blooming in here.
But Lori painted the other Astilbe just so it still looked nice.
Yes, I do that.
We have to do what we have to do.
And now the secret is out. But if you're going to have a wedding or picture taking in the garden,
That's right.
you want color.
So we do what it takes. And this is exiting the formal garden.
Toward the,
An ornate fence with on one of the other arbors. This is the orchard. Some years we don't spray the apples at all. Some years they're very good, and other years they're not. We've made apple butter. We've sold it at the craft fair. And just to wrap it up, we have volunteer opportunities at all ages. Some of us bring our grandchildren if we can entice them away from their computers. And the other lady is our eldest member right now. This is Dottie Dunlap, who has been here from the very beginning. So she works around many areas in Lake County. I did want to mention there is a third volunteer group that has been coming, and that's St. Gabriel's Church coming in the fall. So with the spacing of these volunteer groups coming, it's worked beautifully for us, but we always look for more. So I attended a teen volunteer fair at the Willowick Library just a week or so ago. Had many young people interested, so spread the word. This is our group as it was in December of 2016. We are treated to a lovely appreciation dinner each year in recognition of our efforts. Our garden club has a Facebook site called Moreland Restoration Garden Club. There's also a Moreland Mansion Facebook site, and we tend to share some things. One thing that's out there, if you're interested in this, and it was wonderful for us to have it. You know, we work in the gardens, but we rarely attend a wedding, which is one of the biggest uses of the gardens every weekend through the summer and spring and fall. It is booked with weddings, and someone who married last September shared their wedding video. And the videographer had a drone. So we were able to see things from a view we could never see before. It's wonderful, and it's out on the Facebook site. We also, we talked about raising funds on the Rose Memorials or honorariums. If you go out onto the Lakeland site or Moreland Mansion site, but the Lakeland site, there is a link to get to the memorial if you wish to have it. And if you can't find it, just let anybody at the mansion know or one of us know, and we'd be happy to get one in your hand. And that's all we have.